Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be sharing my October wrap up with you. So as of the date of filming, which is October 25th, I've read 18 books. I have a feeling that I'll probably finish like 2 to 3 more books before the end of the month, Halloween, October 31st, best day of the year. But I needed to film early because I need to pack up my bookshelves, so I'm either going to insert like a clip at the end of the extra books that I read during the week, or I'm just going to talk about them in November once I have my new bookshelf set up, because I do anticipate that November will be a slower reading month anyway, with like the holiday and then having the actual like process of moving and having to set up a brand new house. I think that's going to be really time consuming, and I know I'm not going to read as much in November as I have in September and October, which both have been like really excellent reading months. So I'm going to start off with fantasy. I had a pretty mixed bag. I actually had like a really good amount of 5-star reads this month, which was exciting, but then I also had some books that were like really not my favorite, and maybe that's like partially because I was lucky enough to have 3 5-star books in a row, which like I've barely had any 5 stars this year, so to have 3 in a row was just like insane and what I needed and amazing. I'm going to start with one of those 5 stars, and that is Heartless Hunter or The Crimson Moth by Kristen Ciccarelli. This is the first book in the Crimson Moth duology. It follows a witch named Rune and a witch hunter named Gideon. They're living in the society where witches like used to thrive, but now they were like overthrown and they have like a really strict government. There can't be any witches. Witches are basically like, if they're found out, they're taken and they're like imprisoned and executed. Rune pretends to be like a high society, very flighty, like socialite type of girl, but she actually is a witch, and she is in high society because she's really just like digging for information, and she tries to rescue any of the witches that get captured and imprisoned. And there's a whole backstory as to why she is so like prominent in this society, which I will let you discover for yourself if you decide to read the book. She has a best friend named Alex, and she has another best friend named Verity, and the two of them are fully aware of everything that she's doing. But Alex's brother is Gideon, who is our witch hunter. So we get a dual perspective between Gideon and Rune. The person who has been saving everyone is known as the Crimson Moth, and Gideon gets a hunch that Rune could be the Crimson Moth. So he decides to kind of like pursue her romantically to see if he can get information and see if she like actually is the person that he's been hunting. And Rune thinks that by getting closer to him, she can find out information that will help her save the witches. So there's kind of like this cat and mouse game of them both like having to pretend that they're romantically interested in one another in order to further the cause that they're working for. But then they also develop real feelings for each other, of course. And then also like their entire relationship is based on a lie. So like there's lots of issues there. But I thought the magic in here was really, really cool. I really liked it. It's blood magic. I loved the world. I really loved the story. Oh, the banter too, like between the main characters. It was so good, so enthralling. Like I just fell completely in love with it. And this was one of my 5-star reads of the month. And this is the beautiful Fairy Loot edition. I've been checking NetGalley like literally every single day to see if they're going to put up Rebel Hunter, which is the second book in the series. It comes out in February, and I'm like literally dying to read it. I need to know what's gonna happen. The ending of this was insane, and I just need everyone to read this book. Like it was so good. Then I read Ghostsmith by Nikki Proud-Preto. This is the second book in the House of the Dead duology, and this was another 5-star read for me. I was so highly anticipating this book, and like I loved Bonesmith so much. My copy of Ghostsmith is currently like on the way to me. I got the Fairy Loot edition of this one as well, so I'm really excited to have that in hand. That's the only reason I don't have a physical copy here. I love this series. It's so cool. It has like a lot of necromancy. It's the second book, so I obviously like don't want to spoil anything that happens in the first book, but just to like give you a little flavor of what's going on. We're following Ren, who is a bonesmith, and she's been training to become a Valkyr, and basically she just wants to impress her father, who is really never impressed by anything that she does. She is part of like the House of Bone, but like right in the beginning somebody sabotages her trial so she doesn't pass, which is obviously basically the end of the world. She gets banished to the border wall, which is basically like a wasteland, and it's like the last line of defense before this area called the Breach that is full of like ghosts that are kind of like wreaking havoc on their kingdom. But in that first book, there is a prince that gets kidnapped, and Ren figures like, oh my god, if I can save this prince, that will help me like reclaim my status and potentially have another chance at becoming a Valkyr. So there's a whole adventure that goes on with them, and then the second book is the conclusion to that adventure, and it was just so good, so well written. I love this duology so much. I can absolutely foresee myself rereading this set of books again in the future. I feel like there's been some really strong, like, I think it's considered YA, but it really like feels like very upper YA. It's more like college age, early 20s kind of YA that has just been really working for me very well lately. And I loved this conclusion. Like, I was so impressed, and oh my gosh, this is another one where like I just want everyone to read these books. Then I read The Prisoner's Throne by Holly Black. This is the concluding novel to the Stolen Heir duology, and this is another one where it's a concluding novel, so I don't really want to spoil anything, but basically it's a spin-off of the Folk of the Air series. We're following a character, or two characters really, from that series. It had kind of been pitched as a book about one character, and then the first book really followed a different character instead. So I was really glad to find that in this book we like actually followed the character that I was interested in following in the first book, and we also got like so much more time with the characters from the original series. So overall I ended up enjoying this one like so much more than the first, because I got those like moments that I really wanted to get, and it was also really fun to see some of the characters told from a different point of view, because we're in the heads of different people during the Folk of the Air series, and we're not necessarily seeing them the way that they are. There's like a bias to it. So it was fun to see them from someone else's eyes. And I just love like all of the family elements in this book. And I was really pleased with the way that the story concluded. And it actually kind of made me want to go back and reread The Darkest Part of the Forest, all of the Folk of the Air, and then kind of binge these two right after that. I feel like I would get even more out of it if I were to read them all like closer together, because pretty well versed in Folk of the Air. I have been rereading those for a long time, but I definitely waited a long time between The Stolen Heir and The Prisoner's Throne, since I hadn't loved The Stolen Heir as much as I thought that I was going to. Really pleasantly surprised with this one, and I would definitely recommend giving it a shot if you also maybe like love Folk of the Air but didn't like the first book as much, because I think that this will be like kind of what you expected the first book to be. Okay, then I read When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker, and I have this really beautiful edition that I'm gonna be keeping with the pages faced out because I do love dragons, but I unfortunately did not enjoy this book. I ended up giving it 2 stars. I really like could not stand the main character. I thought she was so obnoxious, and I just really like hated her perspective. There was another character named Khan who I actually really liked, and that's like the only reason that I kind of kept reading this until the end, because I did like his character, but I just could not get into Rave. She just drove me so nuts. Also, like, I felt like this could have been like 200 pages shorter. I feel like I had like a lot of issues with this. So I think like the pacing was an issue. I think it was extremely overwritten. It could have been edited down like a lot. I did not like Rave, and I also felt like in the beginning, it just kind of threw you into what was going on without really having a very like clear explanation of the world. And while like sometimes that works, I feel like there was just so much information that I was like, well, I don't know what that means. Don't know what that means. So I would just kind of like gloss over it a little bit and be like, all right, I'm sure that like it'll be explained what that is later if it's something that's important. But I felt like there like kept being things like that, and it kind of kept like taking me out of the story, because I was just like, I am not like grasping this in the way that I would want to. And then on top of that, I just really did not like Rave. So this was a 2-star read for me. At this point, I do not foresee myself reading the next book in the series. I think like, especially if it's going to be like as long as this one, I just like don't think that I have it in me to do that again. Pretty sad about that, because I was really hoping to love it, but it just didn't work for me. And truth be told, I think like there's been a lot of like very popular dragon fantasy, dragon romantasy that has come out. And I just feel like for me, like nothing has been as good as Fourth Wing, which I also like. Fourth Wing is also not a book where I'm like, this is the best, but I just think that of the like super popular romantasy with dragons that is out there, it's the best one that I've read so far. So unfortunate, but that's my opinion. Which brings me to the next popular romantasy dragon fantasy, and that's Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. And I will say that I felt like this book was significantly better than When the Moon Hatched. I really enjoyed it like so much more. It was also a lot shorter, and that is probably why like I felt like this was very concise and to the point, which I do appreciate. And I did like the main character in this one. And then I also like something else that I liked about it too was that it kind of was like very reminiscent of like early Throne of Glass, like pretty much like the first Throne of Glass book, but with more of like the assassin things happening on page. So a lot more showing instead of telling. And I really enjoyed that. Did really enjoy the love interest, like captain of the guard kind of situation. Really loved Elowyn's brother kind of figure, Finian. And then like the two friends that Caden has, Caden is the guard guy. They were just like a really fun group of characters to follow. I really liked their dynamic and like all of the banter between them. Basically what's happening in here, because I realized I didn't give a synopsis at all, is that, you know what, I didn't give one for When the Moon Hatched either, but like you don't even need to know, just don't even bother. So in this one, we are following Elowyn, who in the beginning there was like this prophecy that she would either be like the best thing for her kingdom or the ruin of her kingdom. Somebody gifted her 5 dragon eggs, but they were just stones, like they were not like active dragon eggs or whatever. And I believe she like touched them or something, and then like all 5 of them hatched. So she's like a mother of dragons in the vein of like Daenerys. Her parents like let her, you know, kind of be herself for a little bit, but then there was like an accident that happened. I think one of the dragons like bit off the tip of her dad's finger or something. And then from that point, they imprisoned her, they separated her from her dragons, made her life like a living hell, and she was able to escape, but her dragons have continued to be imprisoned. She ends up making a deal with this captain, and part of the deal is that they are going to go and like rescue her dragons. So it was really fun. Like I really enjoyed my time here. Again, it's like not my favorite book that I've ever read. I think I had really high expectations for it and it didn't like quite meet what I was expecting, but I enjoyed it enough that I would definitely read the next one, and I also would recommend picking this one up. I think it was significantly better than When the Moon Hatched. Then I read Secrets of Blackthorn Hall by Cassandra Clare. This is the first book that was shipped out for the Seasons of Shadowhunter Kickstarter that Cassandra ran. I think it was like at the end of last year, and the intention was that we would get one book per quarter in the vein of Brandon Sanderson. However, we didn't get the first book until like September, I think. There's still no word on when the second book will be coming, so the Seasons of Shadowhunters is turning into Years of Shadowhunters, I guess. But this book was essentially just reprinting the Tumblr story, The Secrets of Blackthorn Hall, which Cassandra had previously published on her Tumblr page. However, it's obviously been reformatted to fit into a book, and then there's also new like artwork that was commissioned for the story. I enjoyed this very much just because I love these characters and everything, and I did think that the new like artwork that was added was like really nice. However, I feel like this was not edited at all. Like there were so many typos within this book, or so many words where like there was just a random space in the middle of the word for no reason. There were words that were just completely like wrong. Sometimes there was like missing punctuation. So I kind of was like, I don't really like understand why we had to wait like 9 months for something that was already written and then clearly like not edited to be released. Again, that's just like a small gripe. It didn't totally ruin the reading experience because again, I do really like these characters. So I was like fine with it, but I just want to like note that if you're going into it, like there you will see a lot of like errors. Also another thing, which this is like totally unrelated to the content of the book, but I feel like the design of this looks exactly like the collector's edition of Throne of Glass that they did like a really long time ago. So just noting that, but I thought this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed reading it. I was telling my friend Alexa that it actually like made me feel better about the like sheer volume of Shadowhunter books that I have on my shelf, because it's been so long since we've gotten something in the Shadowhunter world. Cassandra Clare has taken like a really big break from publishing anything in there because I guess she was focusing on like Swordcatcher, and this was like a good reminder of like, oh yeah, I like really like that world and I really like those characters. So this was a lot of fun. Then I read Crush by Tracy Wolff, which is the second book in the Crave series. I listened to this one on audio and I liked it. I didn't love it. The story's definitely taken an interesting turn, and while the first one, like especially like the cover design, like it definitely gets compared to Twilight because of that style of cover, but I would say especially in the second book, it like really becomes its own story and it has like a whole lot more going on in it. It's very dramatic. It's very like CW show. Like if you're looking to like read like a CW show, this is it. Like this is like basically book form of that kind of fluffy, like candy kind of paranormal, just like fun book. So not the best thing that I've ever read, but fun. Like it's just entertaining. It's pure entertainment. I'm not really in a rush to read the next book. I'm sure that I will at some point. Something to listen to. Then I read Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. This is an older book of his that I don't know why it's taken me so long to get around to, but I did end up enjoying it. I did not like it as much as The House in the Cerulean Sea, but I did like it and I really wanted to read it before The House in the Cerulean Sea sequel. We are following a character named Wallace who works at a law firm. He has like a very corporate job. He's one of the partners and he has literally zero empathy for other people. He is not a very nice man at all. He ends up dying and then he's taken to this tea house that's run by a man named Hugo, and he meets two other ghosts there. They are basically there to help like get him ready for whatever is next, and there's like a door in this tea house that he can go through once he feels like he's ready to like take the next step. And they're very understanding, really nice people. They have really interesting conversations, and it's always like TJ Klune's characters and conversations that really like get me into his books. So I liked a lot of like the friendship dynamic and just like the dynamic between some of the different ghosts that were at this tea house. Also love the fact that it was a tea house and that like there's like a specific type of tea that Hugo will make for each ghost. Like everyone is very personal based on like that ghost's flavor preferences. So that was really fun to read about. While Wallace is there, he obviously like in the beginning is having a bit of a tough time like accepting that he actually is a ghost now. These people do end up being like a positive influence on him and kind of like help him see the error of his ways when he was human. So it's kind of like a heartwarming story. It's almost like a little bit like A Christmas Carol, but it's not like holiday themed, and they're not like showing him memories. It's really like him reflecting on his own life, but it's that same kind of like feel good story where someone can see like and realize that they made mistakes. So it was good. I enjoyed it. I did like House in the Cerulean Sea better, but I still did enjoy this one too. Moving on to the next category, which I'm gonna call like thrillers / genre benders, because these kind of fit into other things too, like horror and like cozy mystery. I'm gonna start with An Academy for Liars by Alexis Henderson. I wanted to read this one because, well, obviously it sounded so good. It's a dark academia book. We're following a character named Lennon who finds out that she's been accepted at this academy that she didn't know existed. There's like this really interesting like magic, and she's just like learning things that she never like knew. And there's really like quirky people that also go to the school with her. Because it's dark academia, they're all like deeply flawed. Like the majority of them are not characters that you would really like. And then there's also like kind of like a teacher-student relationship happening. So I don't love that, but I did really like the dark academia vibes. I think the first half of the book I liked a lot more than the second half of the book. I was really interested in it and really enjoying it. I really liked the writing style, and I really just like wanted to know what was going to happen. But then I wasn't like overly thrilled with the actual conclusion of the book. So I liked it, and I'm also really interested in reading some of Alexis Henderson's other books because this is my first one of hers that I've read. I liked her writing style and everything, but I wouldn't say it's a favorite dark academia book. Then I read In the Company of Witches by Arlie Wallace. This is the first book in the Evenfall Witches B&B series. There are currently 2 books, and I believe the publisher said that they were not purchasing any more books, which is unfortunate because this book was so good. but it does sound like the author is looking into getting the permission to like indie publish, because I think it has garnered like quite a following now. We are following the Warren witches, primarily Bryn, and Bryn has lost her husband. She's staying with her aunts, and they have one guest that's staying at the B&B named Constance, and Constance is kind of like a huge pain in the butt. Aunt Nora says something along the lines of, "I'm gonna kill her," and then very shortly afterward, Constance ends up dead. So obviously Nora ends up becoming one of the top suspects in the murder. And Bryn, who has been really closed off since losing her husband, starts to kind of like insert herself back into the Evenfall town and like start talking to people again, because she is really trying to clear her aunt's name. And there's a whole mystery about what actually happened to Constance. And it's just really fun. Like, it's super, super cozy. It's super enjoyable. I read this so quick, and I just really loved like the autumn vibes, the witchy vibes. It was so much fun. And yeah, I seriously like finished this one. I might have even like a chapter or two before finishing ordered the second book, because I was like, I definitely need more of this. Then I read Such Charming Liars by Karen M. McManus. This is Karen's most recent YA thriller, and this book was an absolute blast. It was completely different than any of her other books. This one has like a totally unique premise. So we're following Kat, and her mom, Jamie, is basically like a jewel thief. They work for this woman who steals the designs of like very high-end designer like jewelers, and then she knocks them off and like makes such great replicas that people can't even tell that it's not the real thing. Jamie is trying to get out of this business and try to like build a better life for her and Kat, but before her boss will let her go, she makes her promise to do this one last job where they have to steal this necklace from this really like private party. And while they're on this job, they cross paths with someone from their past, and there ends up being like a whole lot more going on than meets the eye. So it's not like your typical like murder mystery. It's actually like a heist story where they're trying to steal this necklace, trying to infiltrate this super elite family. It was so good. Like, it had me at the edge of my seat. I was definitely just like, you know, flipping the pages compulsively because I wanted to find out what was going to happen next and how things were going to go. It was really not what I was expecting, and I enjoyed it so much. Like, I think that this is probably my second favorite Karen M. McManus book, the first one still being The Cousins, and then this one being a very close second. So highly recommend this if you like YA thrillers. Then I wasn't thinking when I was packing yesterday, but I already packed up all of my Bridgerton books, but I did actually read the last 3 books in the series. So the first one was When He Was Wicked, which is Francesca's book. I really enjoyed this one. I wasn't really sure how it was going to feel, but I did end up liking it. I would say it's not my favorite in the series, but I liked it more than I thought that I would. So Francesca is married to the Kilmartin of Scotland, and he ends up passing away, and then flashes forward like 4 years, and then she ends up like having a romance with his cousin. So it's kind of like a weird dynamic in that sense, but I still liked the story. Francesca is like interesting because I feel like she's one of the less present Bridgerton siblings in many of the books, and they've definitely like portrayed her, if you've watched the show, like she's very quiet, very introverted, doesn't really want to be like around the noise, and obviously like with 8 children, the Bridgerton family is just like chaos. So Francesca is like very separate, and I think that like she's largely not in the other books because she gets married really early and moves to Scotland, and then like is not really like interacting, but this obviously showed her time there and what happened. So this one was cute. I think it's probably my second least favorite in the series. If I had, maybe I'll do like a Bridgerton ranking video, that would be fun. However, then I read It's in His Kiss, which is Hyacinth's book, and this one I loved. Hyacinth's book was so good. I was not expecting to love this one as much as I did. This one I think was really fun because it had a bit of a like twist to the format. So first of all, I love Hyacinth's relationship with Lady Danbury. She goes and like reads to her every Tuesday afternoon, and Lady Danbury has a grandson who has always been treated horribly by his father, and his father is basically like running his inheritance into the ground. They have like all of this debt and everything, and his sister-in-law ends up finding like this old journal from his grandmother. She passes it along to him, but it's in Italian and he can't read Italian. So he needs someone that can help, and realizes like through Lady Danbury that Francesca is able to read Italian because I think she learned from like one of her maids or like early governesses or something. So Francesca's working on translating everything for him, and then they end up spending a lot of time together while they're trying to like solve that mystery. And I just really loved their dynamic. I thought it was so much fun. They were very like bantery, very like rude to each other, but in like a fun way. And then Hyacinth is someone that like always needs the last word. So I just really enjoyed her, and I thought that her book was so fun. And then the last one is On the Way to the Wedding, which is Gregory's book. And this one was fun, but I did feel like it went a bit like off the rails. Like I was not expecting all of the stuff that happens in this one to happen. I was texting my friend Alexa when I was reading, and I was like, what is going on? And she was like, what happened? And I'm like, what didn't happen? And I listed like a couple of things that I was like, did not see any of this coming. But I did really enjoy this one too. So Gregory goes, he's like staying with Kate and Anthony has been like telling him that he needs to be like more serious and think about his future and everything. And he ends up feeling like love at first sight toward this one girl that he sees at like one of the parties. And then he's like, he has to get to know her. And he ends up like trying to get to know her through her best friend. And her best friend is trying to help Gregory and help him like get set up with her because she's in love with someone else that her friend knows that her parents like won't approve of. But obviously like through that, Gregory realizes that he's actually in love with the best friend, and she is already promised like to someone else. So there's a lot of shenanigans. The prologue of the book is actually Gregory like going and interrupting a wedding. It's very fun, like very wild, and it was quite the ending for the Bridgerton series. Now I have to go and read all of the second epilogues. I'm really excited to do that at some point, but I'm also really glad that I like finished this series finally. I feel like I was reading like one Bridgerton book per year, and then this year I read 4 of them, pretty close together. Next in romance, I read Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is actually my new favorite Ali Hazelwood book. It's like neck and neck with The Love Hypothesis. Love Hypothesis I still have like such fond memories of, but I kind of want to like reread it and see now if I actually still like that one best or if this one has overtaken it. But I really, really enjoyed this one. It follows theoretical physicists. It is enemies to lovers. Our main character, Elsie, is like really struggling. She's like really trying to make ends meet, and she's working as an adjunct professor. She spends so much time commuting between universities. She doesn't have healthcare, but she has diabetes, so she really needs like health insurance. And she gets this opportunity to interview to get a full-time position teaching physics at MIT. And unfortunately, one of the people who is on the committee is the brother of the guy that she's been fake dating, because as one of the like other odd jobs that she's taken to try to make ends meet is that she fake dates people. So like people that just need to like bring someone to like a family function, she'll like go with them, pretend to be their girlfriend so their family kind of like gets off their back. There's one guy that she's made an exception for and has gone to like multiple family occasions with because she actually like likes him as a person and they seem like they would actually be friends. The guy at MIT happens to be his brother. And he also happens to be an experimental physicist who wrote a really damning article about theoretical physicists when he was like 17, and it was kind of unprecedented. It got published in like this major publication, and it caused like such an upheaval just in the world of physics, and it made people like stop taking theoretical physicists as seriously. It caused like a lot of issues for people who currently like worked in the field. And something interesting is that that's actually based on like something true that happened. Ali talks about it in her author's note at the end. I really liked the relationship between the two of them. It was so like beyond entertaining to me. And I think like part of why this might be my favorite is because I've always found physics really interesting. It was very like technical, like it really like dove deep into physics. Physics was a major part of the book, and it also talked about like a lot of the issues in academia, and it just really like captivated me. Like I found it to be so interesting, and I hope that she'll write more that is like similar to this, because this just was like exactly what I wanted. I loved it so much. There were also so many puns in this book, which I find really entertaining, and really bad physics jokes that were just so good. Love this one. Okay, and then final romance book that I read is The Legacy by Elle Kennedy. This is technically like the last book in the Off-Campus series. It was written years and years after the former final book, and it consists of 4 novellas that each follow one of the like different couples that we followed in the first 4 books of the series. I liked this one. Like, it was really fun to revisit those characters and to kind of like see where they are now and like just get to spend some more time with them. But I felt like I also wanted more in some cases because they were novellas. And I would say, like, similar to the main series, liked the stories for the characters that were my favorite more than some of the others. Sabrina and Tucker's story, it was funny, like it had funny moments, but I just didn't like it as much as like some of the other ones in here. Like, I loved Hannah's story, loved Allie's story, loved Grace's story. You know what, I guess I just really didn't like Sabrina's story as much. But yeah, so I thought this was really fun. Like, it wasn't totally necessary, but I'm glad that I read it because it was just fun. Then I read 2 nonfiction books. The first one was The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. This was a memoir that Kelly Bishop recently published. It was really good. She talked all about her time, like being a dancer, doing ballet, being on Broadway, starring in a chorus line, about her name change. Her name was originally Carol Bishop, and she actually won a Tony for a chorus line. And she said in the book, she was like, I haven't looked into it, so I'm still claiming it, but she was like, I think I'm the only person that got nominated for a Tony under one name and then won the Tony with a different name. And it was just because of like SAG, and there was already somebody with her name, so she ended up changing it. Obviously, what I loved most were the chapters that focused on Gilmore Girls. I really enjoyed hearing like behind the scenes filming of the show, her relationship with the different actors and actresses that starred in it with her, and just like her personal feelings on Emily were really entertaining. And I just had like a really good time reading it. The end of the book is definitely really sad because she does touch upon, the actor who played Richard passing away. And she also had like a couple of not so great relationships with men that she does talk about too. And then she does end up finding like the guy that she loves and they get married, but he gets sick. So there is like, if that's something that you're sensitive to, like I definitely was crying like toward the end of this book, but really enjoyed it. I thought it was really wonderful. Really glad that I read it. And then the other nonfiction book that I read is called Why Fish Don't Exist by Lulu Miller. And this book was really interesting. One of my bosses actually recommended it to me. It's like part biography of David Starr Jones and part memoir about some things that Lulu Miller was going through when she was like things in her past and then like while she was writing this book. But anyway, so David Starr Jones, he identified like about 1/5 of the fish that we know today. But this man had so many lives, like within his one life, and I was not anticipating the way that this book was gonna go. It's very short. I will tell you, it gets really dark. Like, you would not expect it to be as dark as it is, but it's really dark. Started as a marine biologist identifying all of these fish. He goes on to be one of the like founding people of Stanford University. He potentially could have been involved in the murder of Jane Stanford, but it's like unconfirmed, but like seems pretty suspicious. And then it goes on to talk about how he like got very into like eugenics, and that part was horrifying. So it was not at all what I was anticipating, but it was really, really interesting. Also Lulu Miller is a reporter for NPR, so you might recognize her voice if you listen to the audiobook, which is what I did. So I have really mixed feelings because I felt like it was really interesting, but then I was also appalled. So I kind of have mixed feelings on it, but I think it's really interesting. If you think it sounds interesting, then it's worth picking up. It's a bit obscure. And then honestly, my voice is getting tired, so instead of talking about any of the TV shows that I watched this month, I just really want to talk about a game that I've been obsessed with. So Andrew and I have been playing Cult of the Lamb, and it's the best game. It's not as good as Hades. Hades is the best game. It's the second best game. I really, really love it. So basically, we've been playing together on co-op mode. So I'm the lamb and Andrew is a goat. and you have to like go and recruit followers to join your cult, and then you have to like take care of them. You have like a home base where you're like building things for them. You have to make sure that they're like fed, that they don't get sick. You have like sermons to increase your devotion, and then that helps you like unlock things. And then there's a series of like levels that you have to play through because you're trying to defeat these like false gods essentially, and you're basically like the person that is doing all of this for the like big god who is like imprisoned from these like four false gods. So you're kind of like starting your cult in his name. It's just like so fun. Like I really love the artwork. Thought it was really, really entertaining. You get to name like each one of your followers. There's all different like animal forms that they can take on. You can unlock different like forms as you keep playing. And I just thought it was so cute, so much fun. And it was really funny because I like started out being like, okay, well, like I'm gonna be a good cult leader and I'm gonna take really good care of my people and all this kind of stuff. But then you like very quickly get to the point where it's like, all right, this person is like being a jerk, so I guess we'll just like straight up murder him. It's kind of like a slippery slope from there. There's like all of these different like rituals that you can unlock and do, and it's just a blast. There's one thing that I really wish I knew before we had done the DLC. So if you have like any questions about that, let me know, because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but I really wish that I would have like just continued playing for a little while before doing this one specific thing, because now it's made something else harder to come by. But it's really fun. Like every once in a while, I'm just like, we have to just go check on our cult. So yeah, really, really love that game if you're looking for something new. And it's also like a really good autumn game. It's amazing. It was also funny too because Andrew and my friend Kelly both like at the exact same time when Andrew said that we were going to play, we're both like, oh, Kristen would love that game because she loves Animal Crossing and she loves Hades, and it's kind of like a combination of the two of them, and I totally agree with that. So such a great game. But that's all that I have for this video, so I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!